Do you think the garden finally goes dormant in November, meaning you can kick back and relax? That is the most dangerous myth a gardener can believe. Right now, on the brink of winter, a single mistake could cost you an entire season's harvest or ruin your favourite flower bed next spring. In this video, drawing on the expertise of agronomists, we're revealing the 5 crucial November don'ts, the essential warnings that big box garden centres will never tell you about. Stick with us until the end, and you'll learn how to avoid accidentally sabotaging your garden with actions that seem logical and helpful. Ready to test your knowledge? Let's dive in. So, why exactly is November such a treacherous month? It's no longer the mild warmth of late autumn, but it's not yet true, stable winter either. Temperatures wildly fluctuate, swinging from above, freezing to below, causing the ground to freeze and thaw repeatedly. Plants are incredibly vulnerable right now. While their growth processes have slowed significantly, they haven't yet entered that phase of deep dormancy where they are completely immune to harsh, freezing temperatures. It is during this crucial transition that any misplaced intervention can disrupt their natural cold weather defense mechanisms. Instead of helping, we might accidentally stimulate new growth, weaken their immunity, or even create perfect conditions for disease and pests. So remember the golden rule for November. Our primary job is not to interfere with the garden's preparation for winter, but simply to assist it gently. The first and most common mistake is grabbing those pruning shears thinking, I have to get everything trimmed before the snow falls. That urge to tidy up the garden and remove all the excess growth is completely understandable. It seems like bare, leafless branches are the perfect target for shaping the crown. You can see everything clearly. There are no obstacles. However, agricultural experts are unanimous. Extensive pruning of most trees and shrubs in November is strictly forbidden. This especially applies to young fruit trees and delicate heat-loving plants like roses, hydrangeas and grapevines. Why? Because every single cut you make is essentially an open wound on the plant. In the fall, with low temperatures and high humidity, these wounds heal extremely slowly. Sap flow has practically ceased, and the plant simply doesn't have the energy reserves needed to quickly form a protective callus layer. As a result, the cut becomes a gateway for infections, fungi and bacteria, all waiting for a chance to take hold in the weakened wood. It's like performing surgery outdoors in damp, cold weather, and then leaving the incision completely exposed. Let's take a closer look at the plant's physiology. Imagine a cross-section of a branch viewed under a microscope. What you see are millions of damaged, open cells. Frost is absolutely devastating to these tissues. The moisture within these cells and the intercellular space begins to crystallize, turning into ice. And ice, as we all remember from basic physics, has a greater volume than water. These microscopic ice crystals literally rupture the cell walls from the inside. The result is severe deep tissue frost damage right around the cut. Come spring, you'll see the evidence. The bark around that previous November cut will be blackened, cracked, and peeling away. The wood beneath it is completely dead. This kind of wound will never fully heal. What's worse, the tissue necrosis can spread deep into the branch, fatally weakening or even killing it entirely. This is precisely why professionals do their major structural pruning, either in early spring before the sap starts flowing, or for some specific varieties during the summer. As for November, you should only be reaching for your pruning shears for one reason. This goal is simple: sanitary maintenance. However, there is a crucial exception to the rule. If you see a branch clearly snapped by the weight of wet snow or the wind, you must remove it. Leaving a damaged piece like that is much riskier than making a clean, precise cut. A jagged wound will freeze and decay much faster. The same applies to branches showing clear signs of disease. For instance, those bearing mummified, blackened fruits, which are potent breeding grounds for moniliosis or brown rot. These must be cut off, but the cut absolutely needs to be made on healthy tissue, taking a couple of inches below the affected area. Most importantly, after this necessary November pruning, the cut surface must be treated immediately. Don't rely on standard pruning wax, which often hardens and adheres poorly in cold weather. Instead, use specialized copper or iron sulfate-based paints. These have strong disinfectant properties and create a proper protective film. But remember, this is an emergency measure, not scheduled maintenance. All other pruning aimed at aesthetics and maximizing the harvest must wait until spring. So, let's recap and solidify the first major pruning prohibition. When November rolls around, put your secateurs and shears away. Our main objective is to preserve the integrity of the bark and the wood underneath. We absolutely do not prune roses, except for perhaps trimming off soft, unripened growth just before we tuck them in for winter. Skip shaping the crowns of your apple and pear trees. We also avoid pruning decorative shrubs that flower on last year's wood, such as lilac or forsythia. Otherwise, you'll be sacrificing next spring's flowers. Mentally picture the scenario. The frost seeps into every fresh cut, penetrating the branch and destroying it from the inside out. That visualization should be enough to keep your hand away from the secateurs. Instead, spend that time inspecting the trunks of your trees, setting up protection against rodents, and preparing your winterizing materials. These actions will benefit your garden far more than ill-timed pruning ever could. Remember this: in November, the best thing you can do regarding pruning is simply not do it at all. It's an act of deep care, not laziness. Let's move on to the second major mistake. It stems from the best intentions and sounds something like this: I need to thoroughly drench my plants before the long dry winter. The logic seems sound. The ground will eventually freeze solid. Moisture will become inaccessible, so the roots should stock up on water reserves. And so, gardeners grab their hoses and buckets and generously flood the root zones of their trees and shrubs. But this is actually a massive disservice that can lead to the most unfortunate consequences. It's crucial to understand that this procedure, often called full deep watering or dormancy watering, is indeed an essential piece of proper horticultural care. However, its proper timing is October, when the soil is still warm and stable. Hard freezes are still weeks away. By November, when overnight temperatures are consistently dropping below freezing, heavy watering turns into a death sentence for the root system. Instead of nurturing the roots, you end up creating a genuine swamp in the soil, an icy, frozen mire. Let's examine what happens in the soil after this kind of excessive watering. The water pushes all the air out of the soil pores and capillaries. Roots, even when dormant, still need oxygen to maintain their basic metabolic functions. Without air, they effectively begin to suffocate, but that's only half the story. Then, the frost hits overnight. All that excess water freezes solid, turning the base of the plant, the root zone, into an impenetrable sheet of ice. The root system is literally encased in ice. The fine feeder roots, which are the most critical and the most sensitive, are the first to be damaged. The ice crystals, just like they would damage a cut on a branch, physically tear apart their delicate cell walls. This results in the complete physical destruction of the root structure. In the spring, when the ground finally thaws out, you'll notice the plant doesn't wake up. The buds fail to swell. The hidden reason lies beneath the surface. The majority of the roots have either rotted or frozen solid in the icy mess that you inadvertently created. This type of late watering is particularly damaging to plants growing in heavy clay soils. Clay soil already struggles to drain water and air, and after this November drenching, it just turns into a dense, impermeable block. In the spring, this mass takes forever to thaw. The frozen layer, that ice lens around the roots, can persist for weeks, even when the sun is shining brightly above ground. This creates what is known as physiological drought. Under the warmth of the spring sun, the plant's canopy starts to wake up. Buds try to open, demanding and evaporating moisture. But the roots, imprisoned by the ice, simply can't pull water up to the top. The result is that the plant essentially dries out, even though its buds look swollen and ready to burst. Conifers are a perfect example of this. Their needles transpire moisture constantly, even in deep winter. If the root system is blocked by ice, the plant cannot compensate. Come spring, they will turn yellow and drop their needles, a result of severe winter dehydration, paradoxically triggered by too much water in the autumn. So, what's the main takeaway here? By November, we stop all watering entirely. The moisture supplied by the autumn rains is usually sufficient for your plants. The only exception is if the fall has been abnormally dry with absolutely no rainfall. But even then, watering must be very moderate, no more than 1 or 2 buckets per mature tree, and it must be done during the day while temperatures are above freezing. This ensures the water soaks into the deeper soil layers before the nighttime frost hits. Forget about reaching for the hose in November. Instead, redirect your energy toward heavily mulching the tree rings. A thick layer of dry mulch, such as peat, compost, or bark, will help lock in any remaining soil moisture, and even more importantly, it will buffer against radical temperature swings, protecting the roots from deep freezing. This is a far more effective and safer way to support your garden through the winter. Our third prohibition concerns yet another well-intentioned idea: feeding your plants for the winter. To many gardeners, fertilizer seems like a crucial vitamin boost before the long, cold season ahead. But the devil, as always, is in the details, specifically in the fertilizer's composition. The absolute November no-no is using any fertilizer that contains nitrogen. Nitrogen is the growth element. It triggers the development of green mass, like leaves and young shoots. Applying nitrogen in November is essentially yelling at a sleeping plant, "Wake up! Time to grow!" Tricked by this chemical signal, the plant might try to spring back to life. It will start burning the precious nutrient reserves it stored up all summer just to form new tender shoots or prematurely wake up its buds. That's like forcing a marathon runner to suddenly sprint right before the finish line. So, what happens to these untimely shoots? The first serious frost, a drop to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, or -5 to -7 degrees Celsius, will kill them instantly. They will simply blacken and perish. But the problem isn't just the loss of the shoots. The main trouble is that the plant used up its strategic reserves of sugars and other vital compounds on this growth, reserves it needed to help survive the winter. These compounds increase the concentration of the plant's cell sap, making it far less susceptible to freezing, effectively working as a natural antifreeze. By depleting this crucial supply, the plant enters winter weakened, exhausted, and totally unprepared for freezing temperatures. Its overall winter hardiness drops drastically. In the spring, a plant in this condition might fail to wake up at all, or it may emerge from winter with severely frost-damaged branches. It is particularly dangerous to apply fresh manure in November. Beyond the high nitrogen concentration, fresh manure generates heat as it decomposes. This heat further triggers the plant's premature awakening and can potentially cause the bark near the root collar to rot, leading to crown rot. So does that mean you shouldn't be fertilizing at all during the fall? Not true. You absolutely should, but you must use the proper formulas. Fall fertilizers should primarily contain phosphorus and potassium. Here's an easy way to remember it. Nitrogen is food for the shoots and leaves, but phosphorus and potassium are crucial for the roots. Phosphorus encourages the development and strengthening of the entire root system, which is essential for successful winter survival. Potassium, on the other hand, helps the wood mature, strengthens the cell walls, and boosts the concentration of cell sap, the natural antifreeze, thereby increasing overall hardiness and cold resistance. Therefore, if you plan to fertilize your garden, use special fall formula or winterizer complexes where the nitrogen content is minimal or completely absent. Superphosphate and potassium sulfate also work well. However, just like with watering, you needed to apply these earlier, in September or October, to give them time to dissolve and be absorbed by the plants before the ground freezes. Applying dry granules to frozen soil in November is essentially pointless. So let's establish a hard and fast rule. In November, we strictly avoid nitrogen-based fertilizers. That means 0 urea, no ammonium nitrate, and definitely no fresh manure or chicken litter. Even if you have leftover complex summer feeds, stash them away until spring. Check the NPK ratio on the package. If N, which stands for nitrogen, is the first highest number, that fertilizer has no place in your November garden. Do not attempt to feed up your plants for the future. They are already full and ready for a long winter nap. Your job is simple. Don't wake them up. or force new growth when all their energy should be focused on rest and conserving strength. Feeding incorrectly in November isn't an act of care. It's practically sabotage against your own yard. Instead, focus your energy on protecting trunks and vulnerable shrubs from pests. Hungry mice and rabbits can cause far more immediate damage than any perceived lack of winter nutrition. The fourth mistake is often disguised as being natural or eco-friendly. This is about leaving all the fallen leaves under your trees for the winter, thinking you're providing a natural blanket and future fertilizer. In a way, that is partially true. Leaf litter from truly healthy trees, as it decomposes, certainly improves soil structure and enriches it with nutrients. But the key word here is healthy. Now, how many trees in our gardens are truly and completely healthy? In almost every yard, your apple and pear trees struggled with scab, your currants and gooseberries dealt with powdery mildew, your roses had black spot, and your plums fought rust. And where do you think do the pathogens for all these diseases spend the winter? That's right, on those fallen leaves. By leaving this leaf carpet, you aren't tucking your garden in. You're creating a 5-star winter hotel for every single one of those pathogens. Let's look at the life cycle of apple scab, for example. The spores of this fungus survive the winter perfectly well, right there on the fallen leaves. In the spring, with warmth and moisture, they mature. Air currents or splashing rain lift them up, infecting the young, newly unfurled leaves. And the cycle begins again. By removing and destroying those old leaves, you break that vicious cycle. You are eliminating 90% of the primary source of infection. The same holds true for powdery mildew, anthracnose, cherry leaf spot, and many other fungal diseases. Fallen leaves aren't just garden debris. They are an incubator for next season's diseases. By leaving the leaves behind, you essentially doom yourself to repeatedly treating your garden with fungicides every spring, constantly fighting the symptoms instead of eliminating the root cause. But diseases aren't the only problem. That thick, damp layer of leaf litter provides the perfect winter hideout, not just for fungi, but for pests as well. Various sawflies lay their eggs there, coddling moth pupae take shelter, and weevils and mites hunker down for the winter. What's more, field mice or voles absolutely love building their nests under this cosy carpet. Then, in the middle of winter, snug beneath the snow, when other food sources are scarce, they'll happily start gnawing the bark right at the base, or root crown, of your young seedlings. This type of ring damage or girdling almost always spells death for the tree. Essentially, by trying to create a natural shelter, you are personally delivering pests right to the roots of your plants and providing them both food and shelter for the entire winter season. That's certainly not the result you were hoping for, is it? What exactly should you do? The answer is simple and definitive. You must meticulously rake up and dispose of all fallen foliage, especially the leaves from under fruit trees and berry bushes, and any from garden beds where diseased perennials were growing. The best disposal method is burning, provided it's allowed in your locality. The smoke effectively kills all disease pathogens and pests. If burning isn't an option, you have two alternatives. Either haul the leaves completely off your property or dedicate a separate compost heap to them in a remote corner of your yard. If you choose composting, there is one crucial condition. That particular compost batch cannot be used for at least 2 to 3 years. This extended period ensures most pathogens are killed off. Healthy, non-diseased foliage, such as leaves from birch or maple trees, can be safely repurposed as insulating mulch to protect the root systems of sensitive plants like hydrangeas or roses. However, never, under any circumstances, use leaves that fell from diseased apple trees or similar problem plants. Autumn yard cleanliness is the absolute guarantee of a healthy garden come spring. Don't be lazy. Invest just 1 day in thorough cleanup now, and you will save yourself a massive amount of time, money, and stress next season. And finally, the fifth common pitfall, which is also dictated by too much care. This is covering your plants too early for winter. The moment the weather forecast calls for the first night frost, many gardeners panic. They rush to wrap their roses, hydrangeas, grapes, and other delicate plants in every material imaginable. Row cover, spruce boughs, and cardboard boxes. It seems like we are saving them from the cold, but actually, we are preventing them from completing a vital stage of winter preparation, the process of cold hardening. Plants, much like people, need to gradually acclimatise to lower temperatures to adapt fully to the coming frost. Short-term frosts, down to about 5 to 7 degrees below 0°C, are not just harmless, they are critically necessary. It is in response to this stress that complex biochemical processes are triggered within the plant cells. Water withdraws and sugars accumulate. This in turn makes the cellular sap more concentrated and highly resistant to freezing. So, what exactly happens if we cover our plants too soon, say in early November, when the daytime sun is still strong and temperatures are still above freezing? When they're covered, you essentially create a greenhouse effect. The air warms up dramatically during the day, raising the humidity, but then temperatures plummet again at night. These severe temperature swings, coupled with high moisture and zero air circulation, create the perfect breeding ground for fungal diseases such as grey mould, botrytis, infectious rose blight, and others. Instead of hardening off, the plant essentially rots or cooks under that dome. Its bark becomes soft, damp, and incredibly vulnerable. The plant ends up dying, not from the cold, but from being smothered. When you remove the cover in the spring, you'll likely find blackened, mouldy shoots. This damage is far more serious than a little tip dieback or light frost damage, which the plant could easily recover from. So, when exactly is the right time to start covering plants for winter? Horticultural experts advise waiting until stable, mild, freezing weather sets in. The general guideline is to wait until overnight temperatures consistently drop between 5 and 10 degrees below 0°C for several days, and daytime temperatures no longer rise above freezing. The ground should have a slight surface freeze. Only once the plant has gone through this natural hardening process and entered deep dormancy should you begin the winterizing process. Crucially, the covering itself must be breathable. It is best to construct a frame or structure so that the material, for instance, several layers of heavy frost cloth or horticultural fleece, does not touch the branches. This intentional gap creates a vital insulating layer of air. Be sure to leave small openings or vents near the base for ventilation. You can close these off later when severe, stable cold fronts hit. The goal is not to create a sealed thermos. The purpose of covering is not to actively warm the plant, but rather to buffer against sharp temperature fluctuations and protect it from damaging icy winds and the intense winter sun that can cause sun scald or winter burn. So let's cement the fifth crucial rule. In November, we absolutely do not rush the winter covering process. We keep a close eye on the weather, giving our plants a chance to naturally prepare themselves for winter. Covering them too early actually does more harm than good. It promotes smothering, encourages the development of diseases, and stops the plant from properly hardening off. Imagine being forced into a heavy winter coat in October. You'd feel hot, uncomfortable, and you'd likely catch a cold from the temperature fluctuations. Your plants feel exactly the same way. Wait until you have steady, light freezes. That's when your help will truly be timely and effective. It's always better to cover slightly later than too soon. This simple wisdom will save your most valued and sensitive plants from dying, ensuring their lush blooms next season. Be patient and your garden will truly thank you. So let's quickly summarise. November in the garden requires not frantic action, but rather wise patience and targeted strategic help. Today, we busted 5 major myths and common mistakes. Remember this: we do not reach for the pruners to do heavy shaping. We do not flood our plants with water, essentially creating an icy prison for their roots. We do not feed them nitrogen, which only encourages untimely new growth. We do not leave a thick carpet of diseased leaves under the trees. That's a true breeding ground for infections. And finally, we do not bundle up our plants in heavy covers at the first sign of cold, risking mould and rot from excessive moisture. While these mistakes are often driven by the best intentions, they can lead to disastrous consequences. The main secret to successful winterizing is understanding your garden's natural rhythms and providing help that works with nature, not against it. Thank you so much for watching the video all the way through. I truly hope these tips were helpful and that they ensure your garden wakes up strong and healthy this spring. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button so you don't miss future episodes. Now I have a question for you. What mistakes have you made in the fall garden? Or perhaps you have a secret November gardening hack that we didn't mention. Share your experience in the comments below. Let's learn together!